Good morning. Wonderful to see real people. I don't see you guys in small little boxes on my monitor. So welcome everybody. It's really wonderful that we can all get together here. Now this paper that I've done is not new because people often think about future proofing as something gazing into the future. But I think one of the most important things about future proofing and making good future plans is look how far we look back. So I think I'll take you through this journey today, and I think whatever questions that you have, if you're not going to raise it at the end of today, please send it by email because sometimes I may not give you a complete answer. And even if you've asked the questions, we can always come back to you with greater information. It's not working. I think because needs a bit of grease. Yeah. Okay, as I said, history. We are all very concerned about COVID. And we all know the statistics, but we didn't really have to go very far. Just in World War I, 1918, 1922, do you know how many people died that time? Just have an idea. 50 to 70 million people died. At that time, we had about 2 billion people in the world. So if you look at those kind of statistics, right? So if you see these pictures, it's very familiar, right? What you see today. But they had already experienced this just a while ago. Okay, so quarantines, and you can see all these signages about public places having to close, warning against seeing each other, and wearing the mask. So if you think that today you wearing the mask is difficult for you, back then they had to make their own mask. Okay, so again, even with wearing masks, there was even an anti-mask meeting. So I mean, it's quite familiar, right? What we're experiencing today. Even the cities that we were quarantined, right? They were all looking forward for the quarantine to be lifted. So really, we don't really have to see, look that far to say that what we're experiencing today, we have experienced it many times before. And even they had this wave as well. Can you see this graph? Is it very familiar to you? So you look at all that fonts there. This is all drawn by hand. So, so what we're going today, what we're going through today and what we're going to go forward, I think today's slides will hopefully put things in perspective for us. Now, I've had the benefit of, going through some of this information through this wonderful website here. You can download it, you can scan it. So while you guys have your phone, instead of me sharing the slides, you can always download some of this stuff. Now, this is an amazing graphic. Just look at the green ball there. Okay, the green ball and the red ball there. The green is actually the plague that I just mentioned in 1918. Okay, that tells you it's called the Spanish flu. In fact, it didn't start from Spain. It started in the U.S. So you heard about the COVID. The Americans are saying it started in China. Well, U.S. is always blaming somebody else. So in fact, the Spanish flu started in the U.S. Okay, and that took about 40 to 50 million people here, but the statistics are still, nobody really knows how many people died. So if you look at that here, the green one there, so if you compare that to the red is actually the number of people that have died out of HIV, which is about 25 to 30 million people. But if you look at COVID there, it's 2.7 million. This is till today's numbers. So it's quite small in comparison to the previous pandemics that we have actually experienced. And if you compare that to the world population at that time, so this is some of the numbers. Again, look at the green one, the Spanish flu, and the last one, which is COVID-19. So I've put in this in boxes for you. You can just get an idea about where we are as far as the severity of the deadliest pandemics. So we are nothing near to what the world has experienced previously in the history of mankind. Okay, so and I can assure you that this is not going to be the last pandemic as well. The next one, who knows? Okay, hopefully not in my lifetime. Now, if you can see here, why is all this happening? As we know, we started to do cultivation. We started to live in closer communities, from our hunter-gatherers days, So we started to have more chickens and all our animals and our farming are all, very, very congested. And today, even if you look at mosquitoes, with dengue deaths here, we have 150,000 cases every year with 100 over deaths. But that doesn't mean that we don't go out. We still get bitten by mosquitoes, but we kind of live with that. We kind of got desensitized by that. And the picture there is showing the SARS and the H1N1, that the time that they had to remove infected chickens, So this is something that we are going to live with. This is something that we have to understand about what choices that we've made as humans. We are becoming more congested, our cities are becoming more congested, and that's not going to change. And now if we come back to where we are today in Malaysia, this is basically history repeating itself. We are now air conditioning our spaces, we are congesting ourselves into places, in shopping malls, for example. And so the trend today, and with COVID-19, suddenly you get an awakening and you say, my life has actually been disrupted. But just those few slides I shared with you, we are just repeating again the history. So again, this is like today touched, tomorrow touchless. The difference between the pandemic in 1918 and today was that the 1918 pandemic was airborne. That means it spread to the air. Today, we are spreading through droplets. That's why we wear a mask and things like that. We can still get together. But in 1918, it was in the air. So, who knows what's going to happen in the next, in the next pandemic. So I think as far as our preparedness is concerned, in the way we design, the way we construct our buildings, and the way we manage and maintain it, it's all about getting it right. But it's difficult when, I know we have a good collection of people here today. We have property developers, we have people who are investors, and also people who are running projects, property managers, and so forth. So today, I think as a multi-stakeholder audience, we must understand that everybody has different priorities, Does property developers, think long-term, or are they just thinking about constructing something, selling it off, and then washing their hands? And then somebody else is going to take over this, the property, and then the property manager goes ahead and manage something that they inherited. If you're lucky, you inherit something that's good. If you're unlucky, you inherit something that's not so good, So I think this is an area that, as far as mismatch of priorities, we need to really understand why we are having the issues that Asman, my good colleague there, shared with you about the lack of preparedness when the pandemic hit us last year. Now, future-proofing is not something that, this is nothing new to EdgeProp, it's nothing new to me. Now, we even had a session in 2019. The only difference is that now we say, look, the future-proofing has become more critical. Okay? It is now in our narrative because, we don't want to be caught unprepared again. But the problem is, we have 5-star facilities. We've said this, but we have a third world mentality as far as maintenance. And this is why, with the awards, the EdgeProp awards, right, it's making so much sense. It's all gelling together. Okay, and I think the later parts of my slides, I will be able to illustrate to you, and hopefully this is something that we can all agree on. It's not working again. Can I have the next slide, please? Okay, so this is a slide that I've shared many times before, understanding life cycle. Now, for us to understand future-proofing, it's important for us to understand that a building goes through a life cycle. So if you are invested in an older property, you understand that you do spend a lot of money, much more money than when it was spent during the construction. Okay, and so this is why it's very important for us to understand that you need to invest and continue to pay your service charges, and you have to continue to treat your buildings with tender, loving care, because the operational period is basically going to be the lifespan of the building. You need to keep on investing to make sure that your equipment, your M&E, and all your facilities are in tip-top condition, because you don't know when the next pandemic is going to hit you, okay? If you don't do that, and if your buildings were not built correctly from the beginning, you will inherit a future of defects. And how can you be prepared How can you be ready for the next pandemic? How can you be ready as far as being safe in the very buildings that you are asked to duduk dalam rumah, you're asked to work from home, and everybody is living within the buildings and not at home, and your building itself becomes a death trap, or your building itself becomes defective. Okay, and the very building itself that you live becomes unsafe and unhealthy. So I think this is an area that I will keep on harping and harping, that it's important for you to not only think about buying the money that you buy your property, but the money that you have to keep on putting in to make sure your property is treated with the tender loving care. Now, an area, as Azman was saying, that's very passionate to me is really in indoor air quality. So I'm going to dive in a little bit deep on this, is that it's very important to understand that between indoor and outdoor, there are more pollutants in your building, inside this hall than outside this building. And, and as I think it's being illustrated very clearly over the last 1 year about this factor on indoor air quality. Now we, during our site inspections, during the Best Managed Award, when, we had the privilege of visiting many properties, it's often a common misconception that indoor air quality is just putting an air conditioning in. But in fact, it doesn't do anything. If your air conditioning is not designed properly in the first place, it's not maintained, and it's not even, you don't bring in the fresh air. So these are the kind of dirty details that exist in our building. So if you're afraid of COVID, you should be as afraid of these things, because you live, touch all the while in these things, but we have become desensitized to it. This is a picture of my own home. One corner of my own home, and it seems very, very normal, okay? It's just some flooring, it's a staircase, but you know that there's all this stuff in my very own home that I have only become aware over the last few years. You see? So, the VOCs comes from the varnish, the flame retardant comes from the cushions, and the antimicrobial stuff that exists in floor tiles. These are all toxic materials that you and I live with. And as far as the COVID is concerned, air conditioning has become suddenly the important point. But but air conditioning has always been important. It's just that COVID just made it more obvious to you. So especially when you have to go back to the office, or now with buildings like this that we are, how are the air conditionings being designed, being maintained? And even the systems itself, does it do its job? Now, obviously, this is not a very technical session, but I have got some websites here that you all, especially the property managers and also even the property developers here, should understand that when you design a place, air conditioning is not IAQ. Just having split units like that without fresh air is just having a nice cool sweat, okay, because there's no fresh air. You see, even back then, in 1918, they tell you, open the windows. So what has changed? History tells you need fresh air in your building, okay? And mold, and this is in Malaysia. We live in a very humid climate. We live in buildings that leak and crack, and it grows mold. So mold is as dangerous as COVID, because it goes into your lung. But we have become so desensitized to that, okay? So another new phenomenon has come true is that you guys have probably heard about COVID transmission through wastewater, right? I mean, you flush the toilet, and I think, Azman was talking about keeping P and C, the names of people. But supposing you have somebody who has COVID in your building and you live in an apartment, and obviously they have to go to the toilet, right? In Singapore, they have done research that they have found the COVID residual cells, the RNA, protein cells within wastewater. But this is not conclusive. I don't want to cause a panic, okay? This is not conclusive because the science is still inconclusive about how dangerous is that. But I leave it to your best judgment. Even though there's no COVID, I don't think you want wastewater dripping down your head, right? I mean, that's common sense. So that's a little QR code there. Whenever you see a QR code, just pop your phone, take it and save it. Now, this is another phenomenon for many high-rises today. It's the floor trap. Because, the floor trap today has been designed very well because they want each owner to be able to access it from your own floor. So you don't have to knock the door and go downstairs and clean the floor trap, okay, in case it gets blocked. But this current design needs water. It needs to trap the water so that the fumes do not come up. That means, if somebody flushes and then you get this bad air in your apartment, it's actually just a simple thing about making sure that thing is working properly. Okay? This is the other phenomenon, like I said, about the awareness that suddenly it's not nice really to have broken shit pipes in your building, right? But suddenly with COVID awareness, with wastewater within COVID, this becomes a health hazard, not only just because of COVID. Like I said, I don't think you want shit water coming down your apartment or it happens in your room, but it does. Because, when your pipe clogs up and somebody needs to come and break your wall just because, something is stuck, somebody has thrown something down, somebody needs to come to your place, knock that wall down, and clean it. So this is the case of Benar. This is what's happening currently now to many of our strata properties. So I ask you, COVID and waste droplets. I don't have the science, but I'm just saying, look, think it over. So again, now these are the phenomena that we see. We inspect so many properties today. This is the phenomenon that we see, and they can't get into these pipes today. And also, many of these designs are not maintainable. You look at these pipes. Can you even figure out what are these pipes? Okay, and this could be above, thank you, yeah, I got 3 minutes left, yeah. And this is one of the areas that, when you talk about going back to the office or even eating in the restaurants, this is my hometown in Klang, and everybody knows Klang is a bit of a, area that has got settlement. So if you see here, these shop lots here, and the roadside has settlement here over the last 20 years. Can you see that ramp there? That was the level before, and that's the level today. The problem with that is that the shit pipes that comes out from the toilet now going to the back road is broken. Obviously, it breaks. And so where does that go? It goes into the road. It goes around you. And this is where you walk. This is where you park. And this is where the workers are working because, the kitchens are there. Okay? So again, awareness there. Now another one is really stopping the fake. And I think, with the fake news here, it's terrible because everybody is, having too much time on their handphones. And so I have put in a few websites here for you which are very reliable that I have used. So these are the 3 websites here that I believe would form the foundation of even the work done by consultants, developers, and even property managers. So these are the 3 important sites that I believe would stop a lot of fake news, and subscribe to it so that you get real-time update information. Okay, so in conclusion, these last few slides, we're talking about future-proofing building safety in the new norm. It's nothing about the future. It's about going back to our foundations and the basics. It's about designing and suitable building materials and getting it right. It's about designing for maintainability. It's about designing for accessibility so that we can get to these pipes and get to these services. Okay, and the power of preparedness. Okay, so same old norm. Okay. No new norm, same old norm, okay? Now, the left column on software, I think the soft skills, this is, I think, it's been covered and will be covered later more in the coming speakers. So the top, the 2 columns, the buildings and the hardware is basically the areas that you need to understand. So what I have highlighted in red are the only new things because of the pandemic. The rest are old, the rest are the same things. Okay, so again, back to basics, understand that your building, these are the mandated inspections that you require after CCC, but the rest are not mandated, but you really need to do all of it. Okay, so this is the checklist. This is the checklist that you should have in your property so that you will properly future-proof this. Administration, working committee, transparency of accounts, collections and financial sustainability, community and communications. Look, these are all the criteria that make up the Best Managed Property Award. And that's very foundation, okay? So, again, with those criteria, these were the properties that were recognized as safe buildings. Because throughout our inspections, the properties that met this criteria, excelled in this criteria, were the ones that we recognized as safe. And they were prepared for under any norm. Because we do not know what is going to happen, with the next pandemic. So I think you can learn from history. So with that, thank you very much. I'm happy to take your questions.